The social science literature is full of terms ending with ism, I-S-M, behaviorism, constructivism, cognitivism. I'm talking today to John, who's invented more words ending with ism than most people have had hot lunches. I'm an ismist, one of the best. How do you define ism-ism? Well, the Urban Dictionary has a good definition. Ism-ism is a condition commonly seen in academia where terms ending with ism are incessantly created for every concept. But that sounds quite negative. Do you mind being associated with that activity? Not at all. It gets your name out there, and that's what matters. When did you become an ismist? Quite early in my academic career. I realised that I'd published some good, solid research articles, but nobody was reading them. Then, one morning in the faculty coffee room, I saw one of my colleagues opening his mail and finding the latest edition of an education journal. He looked quickly down the index, but not at the actual articles. And a few minutes later, I heard him saying, "Have you read so-and-so's new analysis of profunditism? It's quite interesting." Brilliant. Yeah, it was like name-dropping, only with an official-sounding word instead of someone's name. At that moment, I realised that inventing isms was an excellent way to get yourself quoted, rather than doing actual scholarly research. That moment was like an epiphany for me. In fact, I invented a term to describe it. Let me guess, epiphanism. You're right. Just make sure you quote me when you use that, because I coined it first. So, that was your first ism. Oh, yes, it's not the best ism I ever came up with, but it got me a couple of keynote invitations, so I was encouraged. And then you started making up terms ending with ism for just about everything. How many have you coined so far? 142. I'm impressed that you can think of so many. Well, many of them aren't actually original. If you look in Google when you come up with a new ism, you'll usually find that someone else has invented it already. Epiphanism's an example of that. But they've not usually applied their ism in your field. In my case, that's education. So then you refer to educational epiphanism without referring to the person who originally coined the ism. Yes, no need for that. No one ever suspects that someone else has already thought of it because, like my colleague in the coffee room, they don't read the literature anyway. So how does ism-ism work? How do you come up with the terms? Well, give me a test. Well, what about a new term for working together? Not cooperativism or collectivism or connectivism, because those have already been used. Well, it's to do with working in a group. So first you think of all the synonyms for that. Yes, I've got it. Collaborativism. Amazing. That took less than 10 seconds. So next, when someone asks you what collaborativism is all about, how would you define it? Yes, you do have to be ready with a definition to suggest that there's a lot of theoretical thought behind your ism. Let's think. Collaborativism is the science, no, the art and science. Collaborativism is the art and science of working together for the sake of collaborating. Longer. As a function of collaborative activities and of the theory and practice for their use. Longer. In order to advise the future processes of collaboration in industry, institutions and society. It's important to get industry in there because that's where the consulting money lies. Brilliant. Collaborativism, everyone. Or at least educational or corporate collaborativism. Yeah, so you're obviously using the kind of creative process used in advertising, thinking of the angles and coming up with what they call sticky catchphrases. Except that in academia, it's also useful to have a few Latin or Greek elements in your isms to cover the fact that in English, what you're describing is totally ordinary. Like doctors do on prescriptions. Yes, that's one of mine. Educational prescriptivism. Has your approach to ism-ism changed over the years? It has. I found that with practice you can often anticipate academic trends and isms that will become successful. In the 50s, for example, educational evaluation was popular because many researchers had been training officers during the war. But by the 70s, academics had turned against that trend because they didn't like being evaluated. So non-evaluated performance became fashionable, but that didn't catch on because no one came up with an ism for it. Exactly. If I'd been an educational theorist at that time, as I am today, I'd have come up with a term to express the importance of acting impulsively without evaluating the consequences, like spontaneousm. Another one, 143. And in the last 10 years, I've been reading the journal indexes quite regularly and finding that I can anticipate when a fashion is going to swing in the opposite direction. Schumpeter did in noting that social trends occur in 18-year cycles. I discussed that with Scrumpet on a panel recently, and we agreed that we think along the same lines. Schumpeter's been dead for 60 years. Yeah. And if I come up with an ism completely opposite to one of my earlier isms, I make sure it comes across that I'm flexible and open to new ideas. Aren't you afraid that educators who read your new isms will be encouraged to abandon old isms and practices that still have value? No. How long do you think you can keep coming up with isms? Indefinitely, I hope. I've reached the point in my career when I'm starting to reinvent some of my earlier isms, and they're working well with a whole new generation of young clients. So I'm still getting keynotes, and I guess I'll keep going for a while. Well, all strength to you. I might say strengthism to your efforts. Remember, you heard it here first. Educational collaborativism.